Hello, everybody. This is Todd Dewey from the hit show Ice Road Truckers on the History Channel. And my source of radio and all truckers news, I go to tncradio.live.
tncradio.live, your commercial driver navigation station.
Good evening. Welcome to tncradio.live. This is Keep On Talkin' Live with your host, Tom Kurt.
Hey, thank you very much, Tom Kelly. It's great to be here on Keep On Talkin' Live tonight. And remember, we've only got two rules here at the Counter of Knowledge. Rule number one, we don't talk politics unless it directly relates to trucking. Rule number two, we don't talk religion because we all want to get along here at the end of the day. We're just brother and sister truck drivers out here doing our best to make a living and share some information and make possibly some new friends. We had some great conversations last week on truck parking, and I found out there were some people who didn't get through, so we may be carrying some of that conversation on into this week. But this week I have another general topic we'll kind of throw out there, which has to do with driver training and the term entry-level training, because I've discovered that means different things to different people, and we'll get into more as that as we go along this evening. But let's get started with Christine Gray. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about truck parking, Christine, so why don't you introduce yourself real quick, and then we can go on and some of the things you wanted to talk about with truck parking.
You were talking about truck parking last week, and I wasn't able to get on. And, you're talking about training also. Since I'm a driver trainer, I kind of fall into both categories. When you were talking about your truck parking, I didn't get to hear all of the show. But when I train to utilize rest areas. Today was one of those days where I had to cut my day short. I only got to drive about 8.5 hours. Today, Atlanta cost me 3 hours today. I got 390 miles in today on a 680-mile trip. It's going to cost me massively. So it was 6 o'clock when I pulled into the rest area north of Atlanta, the first one, and it's full. It was 6 o'clock their time, 5 o'clock Central. I pulled along the shoulder, and I got lucky. Some guy was pulling out, and I managed to get a parking spot. It's unbelievable to pull into a rest area at 6 o'clock in the evening, and they're all full. And it's like that every day. A lot of times, if you start super early in the morning, you have to be done by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Call it early, call it short, or run at night and sleep during the day. Period. When I train, I train from consignee to receiver. And we're calling ahead to make sure that we have parking available or within a 30-mile radius. And I utilize tank washes in every major city so that we stay out of truck stops, period. Just not something we avoid.
And that makes a lot of sense. Something you mentioned here just a minute ago is that you had to park on the ramp. Particularly as a hazmat driver, how nervous does that ever make you if you have to park along the side of a road or on a ramp, let's say at a rest area or someplace like that?
Extremely. I have to make sure that I'm on cement, level ground, level area. Now, there's a lot of rest areas in this country I can't park on. There's a stretch of 77. I can't park at all. That's a 200 and, for 30, 40-mile stretch. I've only got 2 parking areas that I can utilize. I have to, train my drivers. We don't use that. You have to make sure you have enough to clear the whole area from Ohio to the other side of Whiteville. There's no parking for us there. tank trucks can't park like that. We don't have baffles. These are shotgun trailers, smoothbore. So we're always in motion. When you're always in motion, it doesn't stop moving.
Yep.
If it doesn't stop moving, that includes front and back and side to side. So we're looking for a smooth, flat surface.
And that makes a lot of sense. So from your perspective as a tank driver and somebody who has trained other drivers, what do you think would be a solution for truck parking?
Well, I know that, there's a lot of places where you see that have been abandoned.
Old truck stops, gas stations, businesses, etc.
Exactly. And you know what? Most of us are willing to pay those prices. We really are. We have, because of the problems and the amount of trucks that are on the road and that run during the day, we have to have a safe place. Some of the biggest problems that we see out here are the garbage that's left out, that they block us out. Now, one of the things that, I see a lot of guys that park inside Walmart. We're not allowed to park in Walmart. None of my guys are allowed to park in Walmart. We can't. We don't park in a Home Depot or any kind of a retail parking lot. It's a hazmat tanker truck. That's just not feasible for us. So when we turn around and like I said, when I'm looking for I utilize a lot of tank washes and stuff like that. So I have to be in a facility where it's safe for the public. It's safe for, not human consumption, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I have to keep that in mind when I'm looking for a parking spot. It's not like a box truck. I mean, yeah, you guys are, longer than I am. You're taller than I am. And your stuff doesn't quite move like mine, but I also can't drop trailers inside of a parking lot like everybody else does either.
Yeah.
So,
and that really, and that makes a lot of sense. Actually, what I'm going to do, Christine, here real quick, is I'm going to bring in another driver here who wasn't on next week, Bruce Richard. He's been on the show a couple times before, and we're going to continue this conversation on parking, but I'm going to throw a question out to both of you. Hey, Bruce, thanks for joining us. And the first question is, if you had to pay for parking...
How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. What do you think is a reasonable amount? I mean, none of us really liked having to pay for it, but if you have had to pay, what do you think is a reasonable amount? Because some of the places, I think, are starting to get ridiculous.
I think it depends on the facilities and accessibilities that you have. I mean,
I agree with that.
If I've got security, a bathroom, access to food, garbage dumpsters, things like that, I have no problem with paying in excess of $22, which I have done. I have no problem with that. But all those amenities have to be there. If I'm going into, no names in here, but if I'm going and I get an empty dirt lot and I have to clean up, I have to literally take everything with me. I have no access to a bathroom, I have no access to food and anything like that. I'm going to pay $10 for that parking spot, but at least I have a parking spot.
And I will say that if I'm paying $22, I want some kind of a shower facility. I may have to pay extra for the shower, but if I'm paying $22, $25 a night, even if it's a pay shower, I would like to see a shower personally. What do you say, Bruce?
Well, I've got a different take on it. I think, one, why should I have to pay for parking when I cannot take that deduction out of my taxes anymore? We used to be able to do it, and I had no problem paying for parking. Okay? Now, I can't do that as a company driver. No longer do this. But I will pay for parking if I have to. But I am like the young lady. I got to have amenities.
Yep.
And not a dirt lot. And I'm sick and tired of seeing all these places pop up. And again, they're making money off the backs of us that keep America rolling. I'm sorry. When is enough enough?
You know, and that's a good point.
Yes, we have a very big problem over here on the East Coast.
Severe.
Of no parking. The further west you go, you have more options of casinos where we can park. But like she says, you start at 3 o'clock in the morning, you better be stopped by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Otherwise, you're not going to get nothing.
Yep.
And I'm going through this right now, tonight. I know I'm going to do it because I got a late start. Okay? It's the things we do. But when she brought that up, I just smiled because I see it so many times over. People are parking on the shoulder of the road at the rest areas.
Yep.
What was it, Tennessee? Okay, Tennessee not too long ago. A truck driver ran into the back of another truck driver.
Yep.
With this trailer. I mean, come on, people.
Actually, here's a good one. Here's a good one. Tennessee, last summer, changed their parking times in the rest areas from a 10-hour to a 2-hour time limit.
And that's ridiculous. And
well,
you know what? We need to go to a break here soon. And so we're going to take a quick pause here. But the reason why this conversation got started, Bruce, is because last week on Wednesday, there was a driver killed in Pennsylvania who somebody was parked along the shoulder up around the 64-mile marker, give or take a little bit, and another driver drove into the back of his trailer. He was on a bit of a curve. No one really knows why he kind of crossed the line and hit the trailer, but he did. And that's kind of what started this conversation, because enough's enough. It doesn't matter if it's a driver who gets killed or somebody else. And, you know, clearly this is something, there isn't an easy solution, there isn't a good solution, but the fact that drivers are talking about it, hey, at least it's a step in the right direction. And we're going to continue the conversation right here after this break. You're listening to Keep On Talking Live. We'll be right back.
Don't forget, you can hear all of our TNC Radio primetime shows again on our podcasts. Just go to tncradio.live/podcasts or search for tncradio.live wherever you listen to podcasts.
This blog on tncradio.live is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 5 best scenic drives for truck drivers. One of the many benefits of being a truck driver is traveling the beautiful United States. Truck drivers spend their life on the road. Although they may get tired of driving, there's still routes and attractions most look forward to seeing. Whether it be cruising down the coast to California, driving in the Smoky Mountains, or passing through the Arizona desert, truck drivers all have their personal favorites. Here are the 5 most beautiful scenic drives rated by truck drivers. Pacific Coast Highway. The Pacific Coast in California, also called Highway 1, is one of the most iconic scenic drives in the United States. Driving along the Pacific Coast reminds you of a movie or TV show. It's about 650 miles long and runs from Capistrano Beach in Orange County to Leggett in northern Mendocino. San Juan Skyway. San Juan Skyway, a scenic byway in Colorado, is known for its million-dollar views. The byway goes across the San Juan National Forest and has provided truckers with beautiful views of the mountains and landscape. Beartooth Highway. Beartooth Highway in Montana is a 68-mile byway that runs through southwest Montana and northwest Wyoming and goes into Yellowstone National Park. Along this drive, you'll see one of the most diverse ecosystems accessible by vehicle in the United States. Keep in mind that the scenic highway closes in the winter due to adverse winter conditions and typically opens up on Memorial Day weekend. I-64 in West Virginia. West Virginia has some of the most beautiful landscapes on the East Coast. Driving down I-64 in West Virginia feels like you're in a painting. If you have time to stop along your truck route, check out Tamarack, located just off I-64 in Beckley, West Virginia. Tamarack is a unique culture center with art from local artisans and delicious food. If you want the full Appalachian experience, check out Tamarack. Utah's Route 12. Utah's Route 12 is one of the most scenic routes in the United States. It's often called the All-American Road. Also, there are 2 national parks at each end of the road, Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef, and many other unique scenic views. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. You're listening to TNCRadio.live. Remember to tune in to the Truckers Network radio show with Shelley Johnson weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back in TNCRadio.live. This is Keep On Talking Live with your host, Tom Kirk.
Hey, thanks so much, Tom. It's great to be back here with everyone here at the Counter of Knowledge. Pull up on a chair. The pie is lousy, the conversation's hot, and the conversation's hot, and the coffee is not. Glad you could join us tonight. Anyways, we've been talking truck parking again a little bit this week. We've had some people who weren't able to join us last week who wanted to continue that conversation. We're joined here with Bruce Richards, Christine Gray, and Jerry Fritz. We're going to be talking a little bit more about parking, and we may continue for the rest of the hour, and we might even move on to some other topics here in a little bit. But we are starting to talk a little bit about pay parking. And Bruce, I'd like to go back to something you said is, first of all, number one, if drivers do have to pay this, they somehow need to be able to deduct it from their taxes, either as a worker spend or something, and in my opinion, it should be fully deductible. If you have to pay $20 for parking, then that's $20 you have to pay there. Or your employer should have to pay 100% of whatever you incur in parking. It's one of those things it's not my job to pay my employer's bills. So if my employer is not going to reimburse me, there should be a way for me to take that 100% off my taxes because I'm not my employer. That's just my opinion. So I'm going to kind of throw that back to you real quick. First, Bruce, do you think if your employer's not going to reimburse you, would you at least be more open to having to pay for parking if you were able to 100% take that off your taxes?
Oh, yeah. If you remember correctly, back in the first year when Donald Trump became president, we used to be able to, every driver used to be able to take that per diem, write off all our expenses.
Yep.
Well, they did away with that for an employee, and they gave us a credit. Well, the owner-operator, lease operators got the credit, and they still get to write off all their deductions. And
Yep.
We are doing the exact same job as they are. Only
Now,
we don't have all the expenses they have, but still the same. We're doing the same thing. We're out here just like they are.
Exactly. Now, I do think the one thing that did change, and this is, as I recall, was their logic was, okay, we're making the standardized, deduction where you don't have to itemize, and I know I have the amounts wrong, but let's just say it was $5,000 in the past. We've bumped it up to $15,000 or $20,000 or whatever it is now. And the theory was that the average driver person out there wouldn't have enough expenses, so that would work out in their favor. The problem is in trucking, if you have a house, various other things that you can itemize to begin with, plus all this other stuff, you may be able to itemize where that works out to your advantage. And that's one of those things where, it varies a little bit, but still, whether I can itemize or not, if I'm paying for business expenses that my employer is not going to be reimbursing me for, why should I have to pay to keep my employer in business?
Correct.
That's just my thought. But But so let's open this up now here, both to Jerry and Christine. Is what are your thoughts on some of that? Jerry, I'll ask you this question first, since I've already asked for everybody else. If you had to pay for parking a night, number one, would you? And then number two, what do you think is a reasonable amount?
Well, I'll do the reasonable amount first. That kind of depends on the area of the country. Let's face it, New Jersey, LA, Seattle, places like that. Cost of land in itself, somebody's going to have to pay for it, is considerably more. Am I still there, Tom?
Yeah, I'm still here. Go right on ahead, Jerry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had something going there. So you almost have to judge it by that, just the value of the land between Omaha, Nebraska, and Seattle. You're going to pay more those kind of areas because it costs the business people more by that. Number two, I'd like to jump to this right away. If you're an employee, this is the way it is in Europe. They had somebody on Sirius Radio one day. In Europe, trucks do not run between 10 o'clock at night and a certain time in the morning. Everybody has to be off the highway. Without question, the employers pay it for the employees. Since when, even what you said before, if the business won't reimburse it, you should be able to deduct it. No, the business can deduct it too, by the way. Now, that's what my point on this is going to be. Every one of the business parking meetings that's right around the country, Joe used to talk about it, went to some of the meetings. You know, one group that is obviously absent at every one of these meetings are the employers. You're an employee. You're driving the employer's truck. You're putting your labor out there to the benefit of the employer. Since when would an employer not understand that this is his cost? This is his problem to solve. Let's look at construction people to travel. They're providing a motel. Like I said in the last meeting, my wife worked for a Fortune 500 company. Nobody ever thought twice about arranging lodging and everything for the people that travel all over the world. Show me another group that's an employee. And by the way, now the question is, why are they giving this response, or why are the people with the least amount of leverage, the least amount of authority, which is the driver? Why is all this being dumped on the driver? They're the ones who have the least amount of say. They're the ones with the least amount of leverage. Why aren't the employers? And when I say employer, I even mean owner-operators leased to trucking companies. Because really, when you're leased to a trucking company, you really aren't that far from being an employer. You didn't set the rate. It's their freight. It's their customers. Sometimes it's even their trailers. So where are the most important stakeholders? Why aren't they stepping up and say, okay, here's our answer to the problem? They just keep dumping this on the driver. I was an independent owner-operator. I ran a motor authority, so I had to accept the fact that did absolutely fall on me. And I don't mind paying for parking because, I wanted to be safe. And not only that, but that way I could look ahead 700 miles, arrange a place, pay $15, $20. Troutdale, Oregon at that time was 22, or Fort Bridger, Wyoming, which I'm just using that example. I don't really need it there. It might only be 15. Well, that's just the cost of areas. Yeah, where are the ones who are really responsible for the employees? And by the way, in Europe, it isn't even a question. The employers arrange the parking for their employees.
And Jerry, let me jump in here for a quick second, because Bruce and Christine, you didn't get a chance to weigh in on this last week. The idea had come up about what if someone, and I don't know what this would look like yet. I'm not even saying it's a good idea. But what if someone was to offer a concierge service for parking where you could call a group, and maybe it's Trucker Path, maybe it's an Airbnb type of number, say, hey, I'm heading along this route. I need some truck parking for tonight between this area and this area starting around this time. And they would look at their list of places and help you find parking. It might be a swap arrangement where maybe like an owner-operator who has a spot down in Atlanta makes it available when they're not using it for other people in other areas, or it may just be other businesses that say, hey, for $5-10 a night or whatever it is, they can come park here. What would you think of something like that where you could call or use an app to get a hold of a concierge service?
Well, that would be good, but in the perfect world, it would work. Like Christine said, she lost 3 hours in Atlanta. So she's already called ahead to make arrangements to park north of Atlanta. Now she can't make it.
Good point.
Yep.
Are they going to reimburse her because she couldn't make it?
I would
stops don't do that.
I would hope with a concierge service, they would set it up with whichever groups they're working with, that they would have a way that says, hey, if you can't make it here because you're calling and dealing with a concierge, we can move your spot to here. And maybe there might be a couple extra dollar fee. Ideally, there wouldn't be in an ideal world. We're talking ideal worlds here. But their whole job is to take that stress of finding that parking spot from you so you know you have it. So like I said, in my ideal setup for this, yeah, you're not going to have to pay an extra fee, and they will help you find a spot closer to where you can make it to with the time you have in an ideal world, because you're paying a little bit extra for this concierge service. You're paying for that extra white glove or hands-on approach. Christine, I'm going to let you jump in here because we're going to have to go to a break pretty quick. What are your thoughts?
I think, like I said, the biggest problem that I've got is that I can't park in normal situations. I can't park like what a box would. It's a totally different ball game for me. So I don't know if it's applicable. I really don't.
And but looking at some of the things in general, do you think that could work for the industry as a whole, or what's your opinion for looking at the big picture?
I think you have too many variables to play with it. I think it might be doable in the long term because we have so many trucks. I think it's kind of like opening up that friendly hand. How many people are willing to do that? Are they going to make money? Are they going to take advantage of the situation? That's where you have the question. Because people as a whole are corrupt, and you know it.
Oh, and I can't disagree with that. And really, that's, some of the purpose of these conversations that we're having here around the driver's table, talking about some of this. And, there's no such thing as a bad idea on this show. It's just ideas that we can discuss. And, maybe it isn't the best idea in the world, but, with talking as drivers, maybe we can figure out a way to make it work or find that partner going to help us make some of these ideas work. But we need to go to a break here. Thank you very much for joining us so far here on Keep On Talking Live. We'll be here right after this break.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. We've been talking about emotions, feelings, and we talked about how important they are in our lives and how they're the center of whatever we do. And in the last Mental Health Minute, we talked about they seem to come from the way we perceive the world. Let me throw something else at you. Our emotions seem to come from things that we're invested in. In other words, we have to care about something. We have to have a horse in the race, so to speak, in order to create emotion. I'm a big sports nut. My girlfriend is not. If we go to a ball game and I care about what's happening, I'm invested in the team, I will feel a lot of emotion. I might feel frustration. I might feel joy. I might feel sadness. I might even get a little depressed if we lose. She, on the other hand, will feel nothing. There isn't anything that could happen on that field that will cause emotion because there's no investment. For some people, it's true about politics. They are incredibly invested in politics. And so come November, when the presidential election is over, you'll see people dancing in the street. They won. You'll see other people angry and depressed and frustrated and believing that the world is going to come to an end. They lost. All of our emotion can be traced back to something that we're invested in. Think about that. What are you invested in that causes you to feel what you're feeling? In the next Mental Health Minute, we're going to talk about how your feelings are statements about you, and only you.
It's Landline Now, followed by Steve Summers' Overnight Drive every night on TNCRadio.live starting at 11 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central.
Welcome back in, TNCRadio.live. This is Keep On Talking Live with your host, Tom Kirk.
Hey, thank you so much, Tom. Welcome back to the Counter of Knowledge, where we're doing some table trucking this evening. We said goodbye to Bruce Richards and Christine Gray over the break, and we're now joined with Catwoman and Jessica Graham, as well as Jerry Fritz. So, ladies, I want to start with you. Jess, Catwoman, which one of you would like to maybe comment if there's anything you've heard so far you'd like to follow up on?
I can go. I am so anti-paid parking, and I need another trucking app like I need another hole in my head. I am so overwhelmed and over apps, like, it's ridiculous. But paid parking should not fall on the driver, especially on the company driver. Why aren't we holding more of these companies accountable? Amazon is coming in, and they are buying up, like, square city blocks. And they are including zero parking, yet they're probably getting billions in tax credits in every place that they've dropped down massive amounts of warehouse. So why are we not requiring every new building, every new park that opens up, there needs to be a certain allotted amount of communal parking in that area, whether Pro Lodges themselves in the center of whatever business park they set up literally have a bullpen. That would be great. I am self-contained pretty much. I don't need a full-service truck stop every day. So give me a bullpen somewhere. I'm okay with that.
I mean, and personally, I think one of the ideal solutions is, like you said, these industrial parks as they're coming in, or these mega receiving warehouses, whether it's Amazon or somebody else. You know, there needs to be, whether you said a bullpen, some form of communal parking, etc. As part of that, just because, you know, Paulsboro, New Jersey, there's a great big huge Amazon warehouse not too far from there, zero parking, and you know, anybody who's seen that TA in Paulsboro, even before Amazon came to the area, that was crammed up. It was always full. It was always a problem child. So, you know, and we're seeing this, and this is really what has kind of inspired this conversation, is the fact we're seeing drivers parking in more and more risky places because they need that break, because they can't legally make it to a safe haven where they can safely park, or safe haven may not be the best place, a safe place to park for their type of trailer, as Christine was talking about here earlier in the show. So, you know, that's definitely something there. But the thing is, you know, whether we want to admit it or not, we might have to start paying for parking. Is it fair? Probably not. Is it right? Probably not. But until we can get people to do things better, it's something that at least is on the table. But I agree with you. We do need, particularly these big business parks, or people that want, these, places like around Carlisle, Harrisburg. They want to fund these big business parks. They need to realize that comes with a need for parking, and they need to address that in some way. And what that is, Jess, you were talking about, I think, the MOPs and some of the parking things in the surveys. Real quick, why don't you just sum up what that is again? And I know the OIDA Foundation just put out a survey for Midwest parking area, and I'll look up that information here real quick so drivers can find it. But why don't you just explain a little bit about the importance of that? Because I know you work with some of those parking committees.
MPO is your state freight planning offices. Every state has it. You just got to reach out and find them and put your name on the list. Let them know you're interested in truck parking, and they will call you when they have surveys. They will email you. They will include you in getting the information out. This year especially, every couple of years, states have to reevaluate their freight plans, and this is the year that each state has to put out a new freight plan in order to apply for federal funds to improve their truck parking. So that is why you're going to see every state, every city, every county is going to have some sort of surveys that they're going to be putting out. So you just got to watch and follow the truckers' pages, like OIDA, like Real Women in Trucking. We get surveys every day emailed to us. We put them on our Facebook, our Twitter, our LinkedIn. We put them on all of our social medias every time we get one. And it's disappointing when they come back to us and say, we've only got 6 people that responded to the survey. I think we're our biggest stumbling block when it comes to any regulation, anything. We have to be able to turn around and ask. When I reached out to Georgia, my home state, and said, hey, let me participate in whatever you guys are doing for truck parking, they were like, oh, thank God, we now have a truck driver who actually has something to say about this. Like, they want to hear from us. They don't know where the problem areas are, or where we struggle with every day. Then they can't actually go and get the money and build something where we need.
And that makes a lot of sense. Catwoman, I'm going to let you jump in here real quick. Do you have any thoughts you'd like to add? Let's go back to Jerry here for a minute.
Oh, sure. Well, like she says, something like that, I think that there has to be a ratio of the loads that are coming in and commodities coming in and out of the certain municipalities. I would think they would be able to judge on how many trucks are actually entering each municipality and figure out how much parking they might need. They know if these are short-term deliveries, short-term pickups. They know how these warehouses are. I mean, you as drivers, we all know which warehouses are horrible to go to because you're sitting there for hours. So, you will need other parking, or if your appointment's delayed or something like that. I think they need to take all that into consideration and actually force these people in some way that, if they're going to get any kind of government funds, that those all need to be met. And as far as you were talking, Tom, about a company, making arrangements or reservations for you. The good point he brought up was about the cancellations. I would hope that if someone does come up with a company that actually does that they do give you a couple-hour window on each way to actually cancel that to get your money back. And real quick, as far as parking, we've paid up to as much as $25 to get a parking spot, and had no problems with it. Like you said, if there were amenities there at the place. I always, like I told you before, I always make arrangements well ahead of time before we're going to go to an area, and I basically map that whole area out and look and see what there is available. Ask if there's somewhere else to park an empty gas station, to try to find and get used to the area. But they definitely need to start holding these cities and states responsible for parking like that, and really buckling down on the companies to reimburse the company driver. Like I said before, there should be a perk to attract drivers, that the company will reimburse the drivers, for their parking, no matter what the cost is going to be. because they're responsible for that load. And I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
All right. Let me finish this up here. I think we'll change to a different conversation here after the break. But Cameron, I'm agreeing with a lot of what you're saying there. I don't think it should be a perk. It should be an expectation. Perk is kind of like a bonus or benefit to the driver, above and beyond what is a reasonable expectation. And I think being reimbursed for parking is a reasonable expectation. It isn't a perk. Getting a microwave or Keurig for the truck, to me, that's a perk. Getting your trucking reimbursed is a business expense. That's their responsibility. But we're going to go to the break here, and we'll come back more with Keep On Talking Live just after this. Stay tuned.
Hot Shots Secret presents Steve Summers' Overnight Drive nightly at midnight Eastern, 11 Central on tncradio.live or download the app .tncradio.live. This blog is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Truckers Against Trafficking can help fight modern-day slavery. Human trafficking is a real and frightening issue in the United States. It's a crime that forcefully exploits women, men, and children. Human trafficking involves transporting a person into a situation of exploitation, which can include forced labor, marriage, or prostitution. The term exploitation in this sense is commonly referred to as modern slavery. At this time, it's estimated that there are 20 to 40 million human trafficking victims internationally. According to the ACLU, the United States Department of State estimates that 14 to 17,000 people are trafficked into the United States each year. Truckers Against Trafficking exists to educate, equip, empower, and mobilize members of the trucking, bus, and energy industries to combat human trafficking. Truckers Against Trafficking goals: saturate trucking and related industries with TAT materials. Partner with law enforcement and government agencies to facilitate the investigation of human trafficking. Marshal the resources of partners to combat this crime. The Truckers Network proudly sponsors Truckers Against Trafficking and their efforts to fight against this heinous crime that's affecting hundreds of thousands of Americans each year. How truckers can help. Training video. Watch Truckers Against Trafficking's free training video and take the short quiz through their online portal. This will register you as an official TAT trained, TAT certified driver. Know the red flags. Download the Truckers Against Trafficking app and request a wallet card and window decal at tat.truckers@gmail.com. Share Truckers Against Trafficking's training with others in person and through social media. How trucking companies, schools can help. Training video. Share Truckers Against Trafficking's free training video with your drivers. Request a digital file of your video or physical DVD from tat.truckers@gmail.com. Know the red flags. Tell your drivers to download the Truckers Against Trafficking app and or request wallet cards for your drivers from tat.truckers@gmail.com. Register your company as trained to reflect your impact in the fight against trafficking and encourage others to do the same. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
For the latest in traffic, weather, and information, catch the Morning Grind weekdays right here on tncradio.live. Welcome back, TNC Radio.live. This is Keep On Talking Live, and your host, Tom Kirk.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much. And we're back here at the Counter of Knowledge with Jerry Fritz, Catwoman, and Jess Graham, talking all manner of different topics trucking. And tonight, we're going to shift gears just a little bit and move on to something called, which I think causes some confusion when I hear it talked about. We all hear this term entry-level driver training. And what does it mean? When I was back in truck driving school, I was pretty much told by my school, our job is to help you get a CDL. Then it's your job to pick a good company that will help train you to get you to the next level of skill set to make you a professional driver. We give you the basics. they're going to help you refine your craft. And to me, that initial company you go to, that is what I call entry-level driver training. It's not getting the education you need to get into the industry. It's once you get into the industry, that first job. But a lot of places out there, the FMCSA, a lot of other groups, when they refer to entry-level driver training, they're referring to getting your CDL. And to me, those are two very different topics. And I kind of want to start, going around here to the counter of knowledge and get everybody's, viewpoint on that a little bit. Catwoman, let's start with you. And what are some of your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, kind of like we talked a little bit earlier about it. Like you said, there's several ways to determine that. Now, I went to a driver training school, which they called what I was doing to get the CDL, my training, and not education. They actually called it training, and that would be to train you to get everything you need to know to pass your CDL, and then some above and beyond that. And then you would start your road training, and then your hazmat training, and everything else on from that. But yeah, I do see the confusion in what you say on that. Entry-level job for a truck driver. Well, I would have to say that you're first starting out. That would be your first job. Entering into the first company of whatever you have to have your CDL. But yeah, I do see the confusion on that.
All right, and Jess, let's go to you next. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm still kind of flabbergasted that people don't think that entry-level driver's training is everything up until you have tested out and become solo qualified. Once, you're licensed, anybody can get a license. But that's not, I feel like the training is actually learning how to operate your vehicle safely in a practical manner. Once you leave your trainer's truck and test out and become, as I said, solo qualified, and you can do every function on your truck by yourself, then you have completed your entry-level driver training. My opinion.
So it's kind of, and what you're saying is it's sort of like what Camel does. It's a phased process. It is getting to the CDL. It's that first company. It's not just where some people are saying, oh, it's so many hours you got your CDL.
It does not stop at the DMV.
Yeah.
It does not stop when you get you do your backing maneuvers and you go to the DMV and you get your hard card. That's not entry-level driver training. That is entry-level driver licensing. Maybe we need to start using different terms.
And I kind of like entry-level driver education. And I can understand why, because it's a skill set. Some people might call it vocational training. But I kind of see that. Jerry, let's get your thoughts in here, because I know you kind of came through a little different system than myself and a lot of other drivers did. What are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I didn't have to go to driver training. But let's go back to a generation where it was done a lot different. My father's generation. We lived on a dairy farm. We operated machinery since we were grade. Now, he went to one of the very, very, very few, now I'm going to use a word here, professional driver training. Raleigh, North Carolina, University of North Carolina. You got college credits for it, by the way. In that school, you actually knew how to drive a truck before you went to that school. But you had a desire to move on up from maybe agriculture, simple commodities, into the professional realm of trucking, the big carriers. 30-day school. They focused on defensive driving. They focused on professional behavior. They focused on attitude. They focused on personal, professional appearance. The function of that school was to take an existing driver and teach him how to become a professional driver. So when I got into trucking, I had to learn everything he did. My wife went to, when I put my wife through a truck driver training school here in Paducah, Kentucky, I couldn't believe I became her trainer. And she got awards, by the way, when she went to school. Why? She and another lady that were paying for their own schooling, by the way, used to go on Saturdays and after school to practice. because they wanted a return on their investment. I couldn't believe some of the stuff, the very basic things she wasn't taught. I had to pick up on. So I know this, that the driver training, whether it's entry level or whatever, is severely deficient getting what we need behind the wheel today compared to another generation. And that should not have changed generation to generation. In fact, if anything, that's up to senior management again.
Yep.
Make sure that we're getting that and we're developing that quality. A lot of it has to do, I think, just basic qualifications. Some people, it's kind of like an aptitude. Some people just don't have. Now, by the way, that school, Raleigh, North Carolina, let me see if I can make this real quick. At the end of the first week, you start off with so many credits. You were evaluated if you showed up on time, if you were groomed, if your attitude was correct. At the end of the first week, you had so many, if you lost so many credits, they'd call you in and they'd wash you out, give you back your money, by the way, and let you go. Another group I put on probation. They had another week to bring themselves up to what that school was marketing to the industry, professional drivers. At the end of the second week, if they still had too many demerits, they were washed out again, and only like half of that school eventually graduated. But by the way, my father immediately out of the school, 8th largest carrier in the nation, picked him up right away. Greyhound and Trailways, not tractor trailers, but professional drivers. If you could pass that school, Greyhound and Trailways would hire you right out of that school. They were 20 and 30-year jobs. You never change a job. These are quality-minded management of trucking companies. We didn't have the turnover problem. We didn't have a lot of this stuff. And the big focus was attitude, attitude, attitude.
And that makes a lot of sense. You know, and a lot of it is you want professional people. You want people with a good attitude for some of what we're doing there. You know, especially when you're dealing with some of these specialty carriers that do deal with the expensive things and everything else. So, anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to need to wrap this up here. And one of the things I want to throw out real quick, and we may not have time to go into it much tonight, is I saw one of the comments that came in about the apprenticeship program. And somebody told the FMCSA, hey, these 18 to 21-year-olds, they need to learn mountain driving, winter driving. And one of the comments from the FMCSA was, well, not everybody's going to be doing that, so we don't see a need to mandate it. And in my personal opinion, that is something that is wrong-sided, because you never know where these people are going to be 5-10 years from now, or if they're going to get put on a load a year or two after they finish their training that puts them down a mountain. And I think if we're going to train these 18 to 20-year-olds in an apprenticeship program, it needs to include mountain driving and a whole bunch of other things. We've only got a real brief time here, so I'm going to give you the last word, Catwoman, on this. We got maybe a minute or a little less. What are your thoughts on that?
I think every CDL driver should have that training, yes. Because, like you said, in the future, they don't know where they're going. They need to have that somehow under their belt. And if they go with the company, I don't think they need to do a little bit better training on that. Or I don't know how they're going to do it to get them on the ice and snow if they're in Florida. But something definitely needs to be trained with that, yes.
They need to figure it out, particularly if this is going to be an entry-level training standard, an apprenticeship program. Let's train them to a high standard, not to the lowest common denominator standard, because I'll look at it right now. If we're going to train these people, and these are going to be the future of the industry in many respects, let's train them as high as possible, because simply put, we don't want a repeat of that tragic situation here a couple of years ago in Colorado. And it's safe to argue that his lack of training was direct contribution to all those people being killed in that horrible accident and all these lives being ruined. But the counter of knowledge, the lights are starting to turn off, because we got to clear out for the next show. So the restaurant's closing down. We're going to be back next week with more from the counter of knowledge. Please stay tuned for Angie and Larry Baum coming up next with Taillights, and we'll have more and probably continue this conversation next week on Keep On Talking Live. Be safe out there, everybody. Safe out there, everybody. Safe out there, everybody. Safe out there, everybody. Safe out